Hey there, so this short video is about what is level 7? What does it mean to be at level 7 and where did the name come from? So the being at level 7 really is a way of being and then showing up in the world and how we interact with people and things. And the name was actually inspired by Professor Clare Graves. And Clare Graves was a professor of psychology, and he did a study and what he uncovered was that not only were there types of people, but also ways of thinking within people. And that thinking changed depending on life conditions. So new thinking was required to meet new life conditions, essentially. So now, Clare Graves, he actually called it, and you're going to love this, the emergent cyclical double helix model of adult psychosocial systems, which is an absolute mouthful, and I find it really difficult to remember at times. But nowadays we kind of call it spiral dynamics. And spiral dynamics really describes the awareness of development of both individuals and collective groups like organisations or any sort of group really. It doesn't really matter, but it sort of explains how they move. It's just a model of understanding the forces at work in human development and the overall change process. And the model, the spiral dynamics model, is used by advisory agencies all over the world for personal development and organisational development. And one of the things which I think is really cool, it was actually used by Nelson Mandela is in his fight against apartheid in South Africa. So it's a really cool model. I love it. But essentially what it's sort of saying is things change over time. And as conditions become more complex in the world and in our life, we need new ways of thinking and then showing up to be able to cope and to prosper, both as individuals and as groups. And the double helix part of Gray's model, what he's sort of describing is there is human conditions, the life conditions, and then there's the way that we interact. And as they sort of change, the thinking's got to change if we want to prosper. So that's the sort of the background of where level 7 sort of came from. But in Graves' model, level 7 is actually the first tier, or the first rung, if you like, of the second level of human consciousness. And Clare actually described it as a monumental leap in human consciousness from level 6 to level 7. It's a huge leap in the way that people think and operate in the world. And it's characterised by a number of things, which is what I'm going to share, which is ultimately where I'm wanting to help people sort of move towards. So it's characterised a lot by independence and self-worth and fitting into a bigger living system and being very okay and comfortable with everything there. But it demands a lot of flexibility and autonomy. But being at level 7 is also about accepting paradoxes and uncertainties. There's a very self-interest view of being at level 7, but it's more like of a collective eye. So it's I want things for myself and I want to be myself and be authentic and show up, but not at the expense of other people, where some other levels would be much more self first regardless of the other people. And that's not what level 7 is about. That's not how it sort of comes across. Contextual thinkers at level 7 as well. They can learn many things from many different places. There's a lot of curiosity going on and wonder and exploration. Not always able to explain everything, but very comfortable knowing what we don't know and being okay about that, essentially. But there's some other elements, which is there's a general dissatisfaction about conventional education and corporate structures. They said that they don't work when you get to higher levels of thinking. So there's no motivation from fear. That's a big element, to not to be motivated by fear and survival. Not motivated by punishment by God or anything else like that, or even social approval. That's the independence element, to be quite happy in that space. Guilt and reward motivators don't work either. We can see past that part to be truly authentic. And it's about saying the absolute truth of reality, not the stories that society sort of puts out there. It seeks to do well though. there's still an element of wanting to create, and there's still a drive there. But there's a distinction I like. Is a distinction between being ambitious and having ambition. This is still the drive to create, but not of the acquisition of stuff, if you like, on money. There's a realization that it doesn't define at level 7, and it's not an intellectual understanding. It's sort of an embodied understanding that this is not what really defines us as people. There's something bigger. Now that doesn't mean that through actions you don't end up with stuff and money and all those sorts of things, but it's not the driver. It's not the reason why we're doing it. We're doing it for a different purpose. So, well, why did I call it level 7? And this is where my thinking really went, was, well, what would it be like if everybody on the planet operated from that level? They sort of saw it as a collective I, being very okay and comfortable with themselves, not feeling marginalised or put in a box, and could create and contribute in so many different ways. What would the world be like? And that is where level 7 came from. I started to think, well, what would it be like if we get everybody there? And that's part of my journey, my quest and my mission, if you like, to help as many people as I can sort of move up those levels. So you might be wondering, well, is there a level 8? And there is actually a level. And in Claire Gray's book, The Never-Ending Quest, what Claire points out is that actually it keeps on going and going upwards, does the spiral, it's getting ever bigger, so that it never ends, because as life conditions change, our thinking will have to change to meet that change. So yes, there's a level 8 and probably a level 9 as well, but we can't see too much of those things because they've not yet emerged. The life conditions haven't yet emerged to enable or to require our thinking to develop and move on as well. But what I can do is share what it currently looks like at level 8 and a little of my own thoughts as well. So I guess level 8, you could say, is sort of being characterised by global development. This is the global community that we live in, but also survival on Earth, because the consumption of our resources and the fact that it's quite fragile, and our economy system doesn't really accept and acknowledge that it's based on a finite resource, essentially. So our thinking is going to need to evolve to meet that challenge, essentially. And my thinking is likely to be a holistic focus, more about well-being for all entities, thinking broader than just the human race as well, and getting comfortable with many different ways of seeing and being around the world as well. And I think from a deeper sense, it's going to be about seeing ourselves as part of a larger, non-localised field, if you like. And that sounds a little bit abstract, I think. So I think it'll be the emergence and whatever happens where we've got the convergence with neuroscience and quantum theory and learning more about consciousness in itself and how it actually works, because it's amazing. So that's in a nutshell where level 7 came from, what I'm trying to achieve here, and the thinking and the model that underpins a lot of what I do. Hope you found it useful and interesting. I'll drop a few links in the bottom of this, so if you want to learn more about Claire Gray's and the model and levels, and what the levels below are, you can go and read about that. Okay, thank you. Bye.